tell me that my son needs me, so I gotta come home. Now you tell me I should go back? What the heck am I supposed to do? Split myself in half?
You'll figure it out.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Ted Lasso Season 4. It's our show of the week. And by the way, I do want to give a shout out for our show of the week next week. Furious on Hulu is going to be our show next week. So tune in to hear our thoughts on that show. Not to be confused with the excellent martial arts film, The Furious, which also came out this summer. But yes, welcome to our coverage of Ted Lasso. Just as FYI, we will not spoil anything about Ted Lasso Season 4 beyond the Season 4 premiere, but we will talk about the overall structure of the season, at least of the episodes that we've seen. No plot spoilers, though. At the end of Ted Lasso Season 3, Rebecca had sold 49% of AFC Richmond to the fans and was evaluating an idea for an AFC Richmond women's team. Roy had taken over as coach, and Ted had returned home to coach his son's soccer team. As Season 4 begins, Ted Lasso has returned to life in the U.S. with his ex-wife and son. He's working at a grocery store, not coaching soccer anymore, dreaming of his days of past glory. But when an opportunity to coach that new AFC Richmond women's team arises, Ted Lasso uproots his life again and heads across the pond to see if his skills, charm, and kindness can make magic happen for AFC Richmond and Apple TV once again. There are going to be 10 episodes of Ted Lasso Season 4. I've seen 4 of the episodes. Patrick Klepek has seen 3. Patrick, I really have 2 questions for you on today's conversation, right? Number one is, you were a huge fan of Ted Lasso, the original, like the first 3 seasons. I guess this is just straight Season 4. Like,
you're just like scooch back to like seasons like 1 and 2.
1 and 2, 1 and 2. And I'll be honest, like when I first heard about the show and Jason Sudeikis was, he was the one that the entire show hinged on. And so they're like, it just matters if he's going to come back. There was a lot of speculation about maybe he's going to be like a side character in the new season, and he's not going to, like, the schedule of being somewhere else is very intense and involved in, maybe he's just going to be like a side, maybe he's just going to be somebody who appears on the phone and he's not actually there coaching. But nope, this is just a straight up Season 4 with a whole new set of characters, right? He's just just the same sort of structure, the same formula as the original Ted Lasso Season 1 through 3, but with a whole new team. I am curious, Patrick Klepek, what was the magic of Ted Lasso Seasons 1 and 2? What did you like so much about this show that helped to make it such a big hit? And also, do you think Season 4 recaptures that magic?
I mean, I think you cannot separate Ted Lasso from the moment it was released in, or at least for many people, why it hit as hard as it did is contextual. I think it's probably still a really comforting, feel-good show otherwise. Like, I think it's exceptionally well made in those first 2 seasons especially, but Ted Lasso Season 1 drops August 2020. So we are first year of COVID, depending on what state you're in, still like really strict lockdowns, depending on what you're personally choosing to do in that first summer. Like the restrictions you may be putting on yourself and your interactions with the people in your lives, loved ones, could be incredibly like just restricting and depressing and upsetting, even if you are doing it for like the right reasons, both for yourself and for others. And especially in a time like summer, where like you feel like you should be outside around people. Ted Lasso drops and is ultimately a show about empathy. I think it is about seeing other people, respecting other people, being kind to other people, to people that you might not know or understand their story. Like, in many ways, that encapsulates like so much of went wrong during especially those early years of COVID. Was just a decent percent of the United States especially is just deciding empathy didn't matter. Like a certain selfishness was like the way to run your life. And so Ted Lasso felt like a balm, especially if you subscribe to a certain liberal sort of politics of like, yeah, like what if we just were nicer to other people? And I think there is a, you can get lost in like, that is the solution to everything, is just like be kind to people and like the world will be a better place. It's a good place to start. Practical policy solutions are probably like actually, how you actually meaningfully give people gains that way. But it felt good in a period of darkness. And it was a show about seeing and valuing other people. And I think they continued that pretty thoughtfully in seasons 1 and 2. And if you have never seen the show, a clip that was going around in advance of season 4 was a scene from close to the end of season 1 of Ted Lasso. I guess I would call it the dart scene. Without getting into the actual plot machinations, like Ted Lasso, like is playing darts at a local bar near the Richmond football team. And there's a conflict between one of our characters and their ex-husband. And it's beautiful and it's heartwarming. And it's like everything that Ted Lasso is like at its best is encapsulated in this dart scene that takes place toward the end of season 1.
Who I was had nothing to do with it. Because if they were curious, they would ask questions. You know? Questions like, have you played a lot of darts, Ted?
And then the show just starts kind of huffing its own farts by season 3 is kind of how I would like crudely put it. It just becomes sprawling. It becomes interested in itself, in its world, more so than I think what got people interested in the first place. And for all my faults with season 3, I thought it landed the character of Ted Lasso in a pretty decent place back home with his family, having completed this journey abroad. And does season 4 capture that magic? 3 episodes in, the answer was no. It feels desperate. It feels sweaty. It feels, I'm not having a bad time, but it feels like I'm watching season 4 of a show that has lost the magic, which means it can still be a entertaining watch, but it has graduated into a show that I'm looking at my phone sometimes. Like, do I really need to be keyed in to every moment and beat of this show? Well, especially not when you're going to say that most episodes are going to be, this ones we've watched. When you say 47 minutes, for like a comedy drama, the plot really needs to land. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like that is happening all that well in season 4 in the first episodes I've seen. I'll leave my concluding thought here. I don't think they successfully sell why Ted leaves. He doesn't leave his family. His family comes with him. But like, I don't think they don't sell why Ted does what he does in season 4. And the moment you don't sell that, I don't know why I'm watching the rest of the show. Had they flipped the very premise of like, what if London came to Kansas, which they play with in the first episode, I'd much rather have watched that show. But that's not the show they seem to have made.
Right. The show they seem to have made is just literally Ted Lasso seasons 1 through 3 with different team, basically, right? As far as I can tell.
Yes.
I'll share a couple brief thoughts on this. I mean, I was pretty resistant to the charms of Ted Lasso when that show premiered. People who've heard me talk about it on like the Filmcast might remember that I was just not a fan. I was not receptive to Ted Lasso's folksy charms.
Just to pick at that a little further, it is a show that is ungodly earnest. Like when you say hard on its sleeve, like Ted Lasso is like cut open its arm and it's like here, look inside. There is a overwhelming earnestness to Ted Lasso that I think can either works on you or you could find profoundly annoying. And I'm not shocked that it would like land differently for different people.
Yeah, it's not really the earnest. I mean, the earnestness did not bother me per se, but I guess that I think that I did not know. It did not feel to me that Ted Lasso contained the solutions to some of our most intractable issues in society. And that should not be what a show needs to contain. Like, it's not like every show needs to solve all of our problems, but it's like...
But the culture did attach itself to Ted Lasso in a sort of... Instead of just being an emotional balm for a trying time,
like,
it's like, if we just did this, if we just were all a little bit like Ted, I think...
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like that. And I think we have seen in the years since Ted Lasso that, like, a lot of people in America don't want to just do that, you know, like... and how much is something like that really helping us? So there's also just kind of the archetype of the Ted Lasso character, which I think is like very not, you know, Sudeikis does a wonderful job of making it unique, but like we've seen that kind of character, like fish out of water, and in this kind of situation, and whoa, like my folksy charm is going to get me through this, and I just wasn't in a place in my life where I was like very, you know, at that time was not really like receptive to that kind of charm. And then I heard season 3 was not very good, and so I was like, okay, well then it's not even worth catching up on. However, completely separated from that whole era of time, like it's now 6 years after the premiere of the show. I found this to be quite enjoyable. I have to say, season 4 of Ted Lasso. It's completely, perfectly pleasant television is how I would describe it. And the dynamics of him coaching a women's team is kind of interesting. He's got this assistant coach that he needs to navigate this tricky situation with. But also just like it's making Ted Lasso uncomfortable because he's dealing with dynamics he's like not familiar with, and he needs to learn how to adapt to them. And so and separated from all the hype and the societal circumstances around which the original Ted Lasso launched, I found myself much more receptive to what Jason Sudeikis is doing this time. I found him to be much more charming and inoffensive to me personally, and just like I think the show is actually going to deliver on what people are looking for, is my guess, when it comes to an additional season of Ted Lasso. That's me. So I did not think that this is how this would shake out, Patrick Klepek. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Now, when you say it doesn't capture the magic, like what do you mean by that? Like, do you think that the chemistry with the new team just isn't as good, or is it mostly the thing you said, the original sin of why is Ted Lasso going back to the United Kingdom? Right?
Yeah, like I got like the main coach that Ted is working with in the women's team. Like, she's wonderful. The actor is terrific. Yeah. Like, I think sells a very unique character to pair up with the personality of Ted Lasso. That part works for me. And again, I think I can be won over by the season being what it is. I just didn't sort of buy what is Ted's arc. I just didn't buy Ted's reasoning, rationale, and like for going back. Like none of it all feels like we just have to get him there. And I don't buy. And again, it's the arc of Ted Lasso as a character. He's like precariously thin to start with. Again, this is an NBC Sports parody character that then they grafted into a show, and I thought gave it a decent amount of emotional depth over, this is somebody who, Ted Lasso is going through a divorce and is a parent with a child, and kind of runs over here to escape some of those problems. Like, there was a decent amount going on with him. Like your kid doesn't want to play Fortnite with you, but then he also I don't buy like literally anything about how we get Ted back there, and I found that to be fairly irritating. But I'll admit to being, and even just how they bring in, again, without getting into certain things that happens, and like some characters aren't in their previous spots going forward that you would expect to be sort of in the circle of Ted Lasso, and the ways at which they just contrive that into being are just you couldn't have tried harder than that. Like, that's all you've got after years away, is like that's how you contrive these. It's some characters seem to have more meaningful arcs than others, and others seem to be only here because that's what you would do if you were making a Ted Lasso show again. And so I'm open to being charmed. I would highly suspect that I'd be surprised if I came around to thinking it was a good season of a show.
Well, I will say, as somebody who missed the entire Ted Lasso train, basically watching the first episode of the show, and we can assume that people have watched the first episode as we're recording this, right? Like, we're actually releasing this so that it's timed out after the first episode is out. Watching the first episode of the show, I did think to myself, wow, that's super easy, barely an inconvenience that they were able to like. I guess all the reasons he had for going back home are completely solved. Like, he doesn't need
his
to
ex-wife
worry about...
just really wants to move to back to London with like their son. This is great. Change of scenery.
It's no problem. It felt to me, as far as I can recall, it was one of the defining conflicts of the original 3 seasons. Is that accurate?
Yes, it was him being away from his family and having a found family that fulfilled him glass half full, away from the family he needed to go be with and develop new relationships in a post-divorce era.
Mhm.
And again, the show is not that heavy. It's like heavy when it chooses to be, but otherwise is pretty lighthearted. But when it gives that depth to the character, and then spends half an episode considering that, and then he looks at a box of old objects and goes, "I guess I better get back to old London." I just
jolly old England.
the stuff with his father, it all feels. They have the idea of the women's team, could not shake that idea. We got to get them back there, and they're just hoping the propulsion of well, you're here. What are you going to do? Not watch them? I just feel like they could. It's not that they couldn't have gotten them there, but they did so with the least amount of tension possible. And the fact that, I just wonder how much is his family going to be part of this season?
Right.
Is that text message exchange that gets them back overseas purely a plot exchange to get him there so he can go meet a bunch of wacky new characters on the women's team? That might be. And that might be it.
You've seen the first 3 episodes. I've seen the first 4. And my answer to that question so far is yes. The family seems to be I thought, oh, wow, they quickly just undid that huge element of the first 3 seasons, but maybe they're going to pay that off somehow. And so far in the number of episodes we've watched, the family is an extremely minor part of the show, is what I would describe it as. And the thing is, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Patrick Klepek is kind of underselling the new season a little bit because here's the thing, they have to introduce this whole new set of characters, right? It's not just one new person they're focusing on. There's a bunch of different characters, all of which are probably going to have mini arcs through the season, and they have to do honor to the existing characters, have them grow and change a little bit as well. And that's really difficult. That's really difficult to do in any part of the show. And I think by and large, they've introduced a set of characters that I think are interesting, that are cool. They are in appearance, I can distinguish them. I know who is who and having which arc, and and so it's a tall order from a casting perspective, from an acting perspective, and writing perspective. And I think they've actually accomplished that. I also think that the question is, why do you watch Ted Lasso, right? If you're watching because you enjoyed the plotting of the show, then I do agree with you, Patrick. This season will be bad for people, right? But because for reasons that we have discussed. But I think a lot of people watch Ted Lasso for the vibes, that vague feeling of positivity, that hit of dopamine that they get from that. And I do think this show is really going to deliver that for people. That's what I think personally. Now, do you not agree with that?
No, I do agree with that. And that's sort of that, but I still think it's a lesser show as a result of.
Absolutely. Sure.
But I will say there are 2 things that, again, I've only seen three episodes. I'm curious. I will watch the entire season. Is 2 things. One, it is really trying to, there's a world where this show has to focus on an arbitrary reason to get Ted Lasso overseas, because that's what people watch the show. It's called Ted Lasso. It's not a spinoff. So he's got to be there, right?
Right.
But is there a world by the end you sort of realize, oh, they used him as a sort of Trojan horse to get you into a show that's about something else? Because they are laying track in a couple of different ways for this to be a show about, about what does it mean to empower women? What does it mean to help women? What does it mean to be a feminist? What does it mean to champion women's sports? Now, I will say those questions come with very precarious sort of tangly culture war fights at the moment, given the rise of the closest you can parallel with this is the rise of the WNBA, which is currently dealing with a huge debate over trans athletes. I don't think Ted Lasso is going to dip in those waters, but it is the rise of the WNBA and now its status as a deeply respected, popular, and unlike the soccer in Ted Lasso, profitable sport. I wonder if the show, it does come in a culture moment where, hey, having a show that is about what does it mean to run and empower women in sports, and that it's up and down the chain. That's coaches, that's executives, that's athletes. What does it mean to do that? What are the trials and tribulations that go with that? Right alongside, just research Sophie Cunningham on the Indiana team, and you'll get briefly caught up on what's going on. I'm not going to wade into those waters here, but it does come culturally at a moment where there are lots of questions and conversations, many of them in bad faith, about women's sports that could make Ted Lasso dropping at a really fascinating moment.
Yeah.
I just have no idea how deep Ted Lasso is going to wade into those waters or what answers it holds for its characters. Because I do think, what does it mean to be a feminist in a show called Ted Lasso? There's a lot of ways that could go like wrong. Like the show seems to at least understand that. Like there's some really, I would call fun exchanges that set up characters who are like, we're empowering and then defer to men. Like so it understands some of the questions it's asking. It's just not clear to me where it's going to arrive at those answers. And I have to say, the moment it opened the door to those, that is the stuff that got me thinking like, okay, you didn't have to ask it this way, but you're going to. And I may be frustrated with your answers, but I am curious to see what answers it has.
Should make clear, by the way, that apparently it's going to be another 3-season arc that they are going for on this show.
Christ.
So, what is... Why? Wow, I can't believe
David, come on.
Your reaction.
You gotta warn me before you drop one of those on me.
Bill Lawrence has confirmed that it's going to be another 3-season arc, and at the Emmy nominations this year, the Matt Chernis, Apple's head of programming, was asked about, hey, have they started work on Ted Lasso season 5 yet? And Chernis said, Jason's still hard at work on season 4. And I know he's looking to jump into the next season soon, but to my knowledge, I don't think we've gotten started on it yet. End quote. So they are talking about season 5 already, or he's, I guess people are talking about season 5, but it does feel like a seasons 5 and 6 are pretty inevitable. I will say that Patrick is absolutely right. This season of the show does delve into the concept of women's sports significantly. And like how much more difficult it is to fund women's sports and how much more difficult it is for women's sports teams to be successful due to a variety of societal factors. It is a significant part of this season of the show, and we'll see how they handle it. I will say, Patrick, this may have changed sometime in the last week, but I looked at the trailers for Ted Lasso. I don't know if you watched the trailers for Ted Lasso season 4. I found them to be quite strange. So I usually watch the trailers for the show after I've finished watching the show, and then I need to grab some audio to put at the beginning of the audio podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And there is almost no dialogue in those trailers. Like there's almost no talking about, hey, we're going to do a women's team. Like nothing or very little of that. And I do wonder if they were worried that they would alienate people, some chuds in the audience with putting the kind of women's team concept front and center. You see them, I'm not saying they're
are chuds watching Ted Lasso. I mean, I understand. I think, maybe you don't want it to become a flashpoint in the broader culture.
People quoting the trailer and saying some horrible shit on X or something like that. I don't know. This is just total speculation. But I did find the trailers to be quite odd. I did find the trailers to be really strange, just very odd trailers. Usually you'd be like, here's the new premise of the show. We're going to meet some of the new character, and I didn't find that. Now maybe I watched 2 of the trailers for the new season. I watched the official and the teaser. So maybe there's additional trailers that I didn't see. So that might be on me, but I did find them a little strange. And I do wonder if that was part of it, but I do think you're right that the subject matter of this season does mean that Ted Lasso has the potential to be a cultural flashpoint, which, by the way, my guess is that is not something that Apple wants. It might be something the creators of the show want and that would be worthwhile. But I'm guessing Apple is just make the show that makes everyone feel good. And
did they put that one show back up? Is that still in the archives?
Savant? I think there's a release date planned for that, right? But yeah, that was a show that they took. Yeah, Apple is finally releasing the show. I'm looking online. But yeah, that show will eventually be released. Things have calmed down a little bit on that front. On the front of taking down extreme right-wing terrorist groups, they're finally okay saying that that's bad now. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know how things will play out, but I do think that you might hear about Ted Lasso in a different context than you would have. At the same time, it's I think this is my sense from reading the trades is the fact that it deals with a whole separate team is one of the reasons why Jason Sudeikis wanted to do the show, is because, this is a whole different set up. It's like fresh idea into the mix.
And
right?
I gave the show credit for that. We'll see if they hold to it, but there were, in some of the press leading up, Sudeikis talked about when they landed on this concept, they wanted to hold fast to saying goodbye to huge chunks of the cast of like seasons 1 through 3. And he described a series of, quote, hard calls where he was like, we're going in this direction. It means you will not be involved. I still expect cameos, but I'm with you. I will give the show credit. Even if it feels like you're crowbarring Ted Lasso into like a new arc, if it can have the courage of those convictions to be like, we got him in the door and the core characters that make sense to still be here, but jettisoned everybody else because we don't need to jangle keys. We'll find new keys for you. I hope the show like most shows that come back like this cannot do that because who they're trying to appeal to are the people who want, whether consciously or subconsciously, to have the keys jangled at them. And I hope the show is braver than that, which is why the questions of feminism, what it means to be a woman, what it means to empower women in sports, I hope that stays the through line because those are really complicated questions to be asking. And I'd love to see where the show ends up on it.
Did you feel like the original cast from the first 3 seasons, like that they had mostly gotten satisfying resolutions?
Satisfying enough, right?
Yeah.
Like you could have seen the end of season 3 was very much setting up or the conclusion of Ted Lasso, but the beginning of multiple spinoffs that probably for the right reasons did not go forward. And so if you're going to I would be fine with merely people coming by. Like you can imagine, again, we've only seen a couple of episodes. We don't even have access to the rest of the season. Hey, like the team has a big game. And like some of the other People in the Ted Lasso verse come by to like say hello or give a big speech.
Right.
I'm fine with that, but leave it to cameos rather than, anything beyond that. I think it's kind of the only path forward for if they're going to do 3 seasons, they want to. The way that stands up on its own is by standing up on its own. And you don't do that by just dragging in other characters. Because I think
to be fair, all signs point to them doing it the way that you're describing.
I hope that's true, because I think the characters they kept are the characters that make the most sense to have an arc alongside like the story that they're telling. Like there's a reason they mostly kept the primary women characters from Ted Lasso season 1 through 3, because they have the most to lose and gain, like personally and like externally, from the arc of this team. That should be something interesting to follow beyond their romantic pursuits, which are some of the least interesting parts of the show.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's going to bring us to the end of our conversation about Ted Lasso season 4. I think overall, despite how sweaty it was to get Ted Lasso back across the pond, I think that if you were a fan of Ted Lasso seasons 1 through 3, you're going to like Ted Lasso season 4. And Patrick is less sure, I guess.
What I would say is I actively loathed season 3. And I think that like part of my reaction to season 4 is like, come on, like what we just did this. It was a couple years ago, but like we just did this. I think I feel as somebody that like holds the show to a higher standard because of what I enjoyed in season 1 and 2. I need it didn't feel like the show was trying hard enough in its first episode, but by episodes 2 and 3, there are at least signs that it's trying to lay a foundation for something more than just we all came back to get a bunch of checks from Apple. But the first episode feels like we all came back to get a bunch of big checks from Apple. And you watch the other seasons, of course, you're going to like respect me a little bit more than that. And episodes 2 and 3 do gesture at a show that is more thoughtful than just we're doing a reunion sequel season, a couple years later. So I want the show to win me over. Like I said, I'm going to watch it. But that for like, if you were like me with season 3 and you're like, I'm curious about season 4, unfortunately, it's either don't watch it at all or you need to watch past the first episode. Because I think the first episode will play into your worst expectations for where it's going. And it's really by the end of the third episode. I think the first 3 episodes sort of set up some dynamics between the main characters that could be really interesting depending on where it goes. So I think you got to give it a genuine chance if you want it to try and win you over. If you just watch the first episode, I think you're going to go click. Like, they just did what I thought they would do. And I think it is possible they're doing more. I'm just a little bit more wait and see on it.
I would agree completely that the first episode of Ted Lasso season 4 does not give you a good sense of what the season is going to be like. So, yeah, just good to know going in. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.